and and win the thing. But then 4 runs, including a 3-run homer in the top of the 9th, and that was it. You knew that South Carolina was not going to be able to put an 8 or 9 run bottom of the 9th together, and that's just it sucks. I mean, there's really no other way to describe it. It just sucks because you felt like you had all this momentum coming in to this penultimate weekend of SEC regular season play, and look, you knew you were facing a good team. This is a really good Georgia team, one of the most high-powered offenses in all of college baseball. And even if you didn't win the series, you at least wanted to have optimism and hope coming away from it. Like, man, you dropped 2 out of 3, but okay, you maybe you lost on Thursday night in a 4-5 game or something like that, and maybe you won on Friday night and it was 7-6 or 7-5 or something like that, and then maybe you lost on Saturday in a game that got away from you or something like that. You would have felt better about that. But again, to go through this entire series where outside of a few moments here and there where your offense did kind of spark, you just never felt like South Carolina really had a chance throughout the entire series. And that is concerning because after this, you're facing literally the number 1 team in the country to wrap up your regular season. And I don't expect it to go much better in Knoxville. And I hate to be pessimistic because I'm typically a glass half full kind of guy, but I don't see anything outside of maybe another great Garrett Gainey outing this upcoming weekend. I don't see anything that's giving me optimism that you can go up there to Knoxville and take down the Vols in any of these games. Like if you told me right now Carolina was going to get swept in Knoxville, I'd say, yeah, I see that. I just do. And that's unfortunate. It sucks, but that's just kind of where we're at right now. Again, what you were able to do in Missouri was a lucky break. That you faced a team that was bad enough that despite your starting pitching being ineffective, you still were able to escape taking 2 out of 3. But again, when you go up against high-powered offense, they're going to take advantage of that. And it was just starting pitching this time. It was the entire pitching staff. I mean, again, everybody but Gainey pretty much struggled. And in the SEC, you got to pitch well if you want to win series. What, to me, also makes this worse in the grand scheme of things is that, Kingston's been here a while now. Last year was obviously, he's been here since 2018. So last year was obviously the first time that South Carolina properly hosted a regional. Obviously made it back to a super for the first time since his first year. So, hey, step in the right direction, right? You going into the weekend, you were on the precipice of potentially hosting another regional again, the projected 16 seed going into the weekend against a team in Georgia that was only a couple spots ahead of you, projected to be 14 going into the weekend. And then they just come in and take your lunch money in your home stadium and obviously knock you out of hosting right now. Who knows how far down in the overall projection order they tumble, but they're definitely not going to be in that top 16. When the latest D1 projections come out for the Field of 64. And what I think makes this worse is that this was a Georgia program that, let's go back to the early 2000s. They made multiple trips to Omaha, were in the College World Series in 2008. Taking on Fresno State. In the finale, and through the 2010s, they underachieved. And they weren't going to supers. They certainly weren't going to Omaha. And that's why Coach Scott Strickland got fired after last season, because he could not get them past regionals. And I know Georgia's not had as much success as South Carolina's had in recent history as far as winning national championships goes, but there's a level of expectation with that fan base that team should be a routine to frequent visitor to Omaha. And they weren't doing that with Scott Strickland, which is why they made the move to fire him and bring in Wes Johnson, who, again, had never been a head coach before. And he comes in his first year. And I don't know about you, that team looked Omaha good to me over the weekend. If you told me right now that Georgia was going to win the College World Series a little over a month from now, I'd believe it. I think a lot of people would believe it. They look that good. And when you compare that to a team in South Carolina where Coach Kingston's been here for, 7 years, it's like Georgia surpassed you. Georgia looks better than you right now with a first-year head coach. And again, it's one of those things that, okay, if it's a situation where they'd been to, Omaha, 3 out of the last 5 years, then fired their coach for whatever reason, and they're this good again, that's one thing. But again, for a team and a program that had not gotten out of supers not gotten out of regionals in 10 years, to come in here and do that and look as strong as they do, I think that's even more of a glaring reflection on what South Carolina is right now, because they've been surpassed by a team that they've routinely, in the grand scheme of things, looked better than for the most part. And now you're behind them. And again, now you're going on the road to Knoxville to take on the number 1 team in the country this upcoming weekend to wrap up your regular season. And again, I don't expect that to look great. And then guess what? You're limping into Hoover. And I believe, I didn't get a chance to listen to it, but Terry told me, I think Jamie Bradford said on the early game this morning that if Carolina gets swept in Knoxville, he's concerned for their standing in the NCAA tournament as a whole. Don't quote me on that. Again, I didn't hear that. It was just information being passed along to me, but I'm very interested to see how far they tumble in the latest projections. Because, man, what an ugly, ugly series this weekend. And you hate to see it all fall apart at the end. Because this has been an up and down season, obviously. Carolina was struggling to put together, series wins early on in the year. And then they finally put together those series wins outside of the Vanderbilt series, obviously, early on in the season. But if I started clicking, it seemed like winning 3 out of 4. And again, you didn't have to go out there and sweep Georgia, but you just wanted to look more competitive, to give you a good feeling coming away from the weekend. And that's pretty much the opposite of what happened. Looking at the latest D1 rankings, this is not the Field of 64 projection. South Carolina tumbles from number 13 to number 24. So they're still ranked. So they're going to be going into Knoxville as a ranked team, at least, going into the weekend. But definitely going to need to show some kind of promise against the Volunteers to hopefully springboard you into a good Hoover, which becomes all the more important right now. Because, again, you're likely out of hosting. I can almost guarantee you're out of hosting right now. So if you can have one game in Knoxville and then put together a really good Hoover, maybe you get yourself back in. Now, again, if you sweep against Tennessee, which I don't think is going to happen, then maybe that's enough in and of itself. But if you can at least take one against Tennessee and then have a really deep run in Hoover, and again, there's a lot of factors at play here. It depends on what other teams do. So it's really hard to project this out as of right now, but maybe there's a chance. But, God, I mean, again, you just got beaten over the head in your home venue by a very good Georgia team. Got to lick the wounds and hopefully respond better this upcoming weekend. So we'll see. A lot to get into with this. If you have a reaction, 803-404-6100. Love Chevrolet phone lines as well as the Firehouse Subs text line. We'll dive into this with our guy, Jack Veltri, coming up next as he was out there at Founders Park all weekend long. We'll get his thoughts as we do each and every week. Coming up next is The Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you. You can always check us out on the 107.5 The Game app. Download it on the App Store, the Google Play Store. Take us with you wherever you go. As well as check us out on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. Jack Veltri of Gamecock Central up next on the Extra Point on your Monday on the Game.
the third. Casas leading off. Gamecocks still looking for their first hit against Zach Harris, and it might be here. A drive to right. Back goes Goldstein. Goodbye. Senior day for Gavin Casas. And his 8th home run of the season ties this game at 1.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here. That was the call on Saturday afternoon. Gavin Casas hitting a home run in Game 3 against Georgia. As Derek Scott just said, they're tying the game at 1. South Carolina did have a lead late in that game, 6-4, and then the wheels ended up falling off as they dropped the third game 14-6 and ended up getting swept at home for the first time since 2019. Our guy Jack Belcher from Gamecock Central was out there to witness it all this weekend. And Jack, you know, I play that Casas highlight. You look at the offensive numbers, they're actually not terrible. 21 runs over the course of 3 games isn't anything to shake a stick at, you know, especially against the Georgia pitching staff that had improved as of late. But with South Carolina's pitching not being able to stop Georgia at all, you just never really felt like South Carolina had a chance over the course of these 3 games, outside of Gainey's performance on Saturday.
Yeah, first off, thank you for having me on as always. But I would agree with you. I think South Carolina's offense, for the most part, gave them a chance to win each of those games. Now, game 1 especially, you score 10 runs. That's inexcusable. You can't be losing a game like that. The second game, I believe they had 5 or 6 runs. And, I mean, look, the fact that they fell behind so early made it tough to come back. But, like, when you're scoring that many runs, that should be enough, right, with the capable pitching staff. And then, obviously, on Saturday, I mean, look, that game, all you needed was 6 more outs after taking a 6-4 lead. And it's worrisome that South Carolina has to use as many guys as it did to get only 11 outs after Garrett Gainey came out and pitched wonderfully. But, yeah, I think South Carolina clearly has a pitching problem right now, and it's tough to see because, I mean, this team had an Omaha-level pitching staff last year with all those guys, and now they're gone. And you're seeing the question mark that was there at the beginning of the season slowly start to come back. And, they've got to find some guys in a hurry with a really good Tennessee team coming up this weekend.
Well, and I think about this from a momentum standpoint. You're carrying absolutely none into Knoxville. Oh, by the way, that's the #1 team in the country that hits quite a few home runs and scores a lot of runs themselves. So I don't, I hate to be the negative type here, but I don't have a lot of optimism that it's suddenly going to get better this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, I don't know, honestly. I gotta like do a little bit more research on like Tennessee before that series starts, but like, I mean, just based off the numbers, I mean, they're a good team all around, and they just took 2 or 3 from Vanderbilt. I know that, but I wonder because I mean, look, obviously it's going to be in Knoxville. It's going to be a tough series, and I mean, with everything that's been going wrong for South Carolina, it's hard to envision it's going to get much better. I think at the least you can take 1 game somewhere in that weekend, but even that, it's going to be tough.
Obviously, at the end of the day, it is all about the players going out there and executing on the mound, in the field, and at the plate. But at what point do we really have to just point the finger at coaching and saying there's some kind of issue, there's some kind of problem here with the development or whatever it may be between Kingston, Matt Williams, whoever might be at fault here with what's going on the mound?
It's an interesting discussion, and it's probably one that's going to be, heating up over these next few weeks. The thing with this is, at the end of the day, you are right. It does come down to the players executing. I mean, I don't see Kingston out there on the field throwing strikes and balls. I mean, that's just he's not out there doing that. Now, he is making decisions, and with Matt Williams' help, to figure out who the best guys are to put in. And that's where I see the faults, right? You start Roman Kimball after he clearly struggled last weekend. You put Connor McCurry back in the game one day after he got shelled, and he goes on to give up a grand slam. Just for the most part, the decisions have just not been great lately, especially with the pitching staff. I'll give him credit. The offense has looked a lot better since he's made that lineup change, but there's definitely faults on both sides. It's not just Kingston's fault. It's not just the players' fault. I think everyone deserves accountability. And I know these are just college kids and stuff, but I mean, at the end of the day, they are the ones that are out there on the field. And if you're not doing your job, you deserve some sort of criticism for that. And, it's all around. It's players and coaches, and that's why it's a team game, and, they're not getting the job done right now as a result.
Again, talking to our guy, Jack Feltry from Gamecock Central, recapping a tough weekend out at Founders Park for South Carolina baseball. Don't want to make this all negative because, again, Garrett Gainey went out there and put on the performance of a lifetime that should have been good enough to springboard South Carolina to at least one win. He's had his ups and downs this year, but man, what a 5 1/3 innings he was able to give to you on Saturday.
Yeah, that was a real gamble by Mark Kingston to make that decision there to start him, and it really did pay dividends. I mean, 5 1/3 strong innings, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk. Of his 81 pitches, 62 of them were for strikes. I mean, he's a fastball first pitcher, as we know. He gets up to about 94, 95 in the zone. And against the Georgia team that really has been hitting well lately, I was curious to see how that was going to play out. And it really did work. I mean, he got a lot of guys behind in the count, and it worked in his favor. And look, I mean, you wonder why it took so long for him to be a starter and stuff. And I actually asked Kingston this after the game, and you have to think about it this way: you need someone to finish games, and he was doing such a good job as this team's closer, pitching. He could go 2-3 innings out of relief at the end of the game in the 7th, 8th, and 9th, and that's a valuable weapon to have. And Matt Williams was his pitching coach last year at Liberty, and he saw what he looked like as a starter at Liberty. I mean, he started about half his games there last year with the Flames, and Matt's opinion was that just he liked him better as a reliever, and I would have to agree with him because you look at his numbers from his time at Winthrop and Liberty, it just wasn't that impressive. So the fact that he was working so well out of the bullpen, why would you mess with that? But when you're in a situation where you need starters, I mean, you really don't have anyone, why not go with someone who's a former starter by trade? It may work out, it may not, and for South Carolina, it's worked out so far. Now you just have to build up his pitch count a little more to get him to that 100 pitch count range so he can get you through the 6th inning, and you just hope it doesn't backfire at all.
So Carolina came into the weekend as the projected 16 seed, which means they would have been hosting a regional if everything went right. They're obviously not going to be the 16 seed when the newest projections for D1 baseball come out. What do they need to do both in Knoxville and in Hoover to get themselves back into hosting realistically?
Hosting, I would say they need to probably take – if you're going into Knoxville, sweeping probably. But let's just say they take 2 or 3. I think that's a good start. And then in Hoover, a place that's not been very good for them over the years, I would say, I don't know, probably like 2 or 3 wins maybe. I'm not exactly sure. I feel like that's probably what they need to do. But I mean, I don't think they're that far off the hosting map. I mean, they really do need to win this series this weekend, and that would help. But it's going to be tough. And you're probably looking at South Carolina. If they were to drop this weekend series and then not play well in Hoover, we're probably looking at maybe like a 3 seed in any regional, but maybe a 2 seed if they can scratch off 1 win this weekend and then go from there.
We'll see what happens. Hopefully it serves them better on the road in Knoxville this weekend, and we'll touch base with you later on in the week to preview that series. Appreciate it as always, Jack.
Thanks so much. Yeah, hopefully times are better this weekend in Knoxville, but I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, Jack Feltry from Gamecock Central. Another series down, another series waiting for a Grand Slam to be hit as the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway rolls along to another game as they head off to Knoxville. $1,275 will be up for grabs if a Gamecock hitter can manage to hit a Grand Slam this weekend. Had a Grand Slam hit on them this weekend. Unfortunately, no Gamecock hitter with a Grand Slam so far this season. So again, head online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win, because if a Gamecock hitter does hit one this weekend, the following show, whether that be on Friday or coming up on Monday, Bill and Preston will announce a winner live on the air of the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. Time to talk some hardwood, coming up next, sponsored by our friends over at Georgia Pacific. We'll shine a light on a couple of pitchers from the weekend, both from South Carolina and from the major leagues as well, as the Extra Point rolls along with you on this Monday here on The Game. Let me ask you a question. How's your home's foundation doing? You're probably looking or at your radio thinking, well, I don't know how my home's foundation is doing. I don't pay attention to that. Well, you really should, because there might be some problems with your home's foundation, and there could be some very clear signs that there are issues. Things like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors or windows that might stick, uneven or bouncy floors, or something like cracks over your garage door. If you see any of these issues, any of them at all with your home, you need to check out our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialists, because you could have serious foundation problems with your home, and you need to get a professional out there to get it fixed up for you and your family. Go online to cantycanfixit.com and schedule an appointment with our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on this Monday. It is time to talk some hardwood, where we shine a light on some great performances from over the weekend. Again, it's sponsored by our friends over at Georgia Pacific, and we've mentioned him several times already this morning, but Garrett Gainey certainly deserving of a little bit of love for what he was able to do this past weekend against Georgia. And again, pitched well enough to where you probably should have won at least game number 3 and not gotten swept on the weekend. But unfortunately, the bullpen ended up letting him down there in the last couple of innings of that game. But regardless, went out there and pitched his heart out for the 5 1/3 innings, giving up 5 hits and only the 2 earned runs with 7 strikeouts. And Garrett Gainey has been such an interesting story, this season. Again, he comes over with Matt Williams from Liberty, and here's a dude that was just absolute money early on in non-conference play. Again, we've talked about it before. He, for the longest time, only had the 1 earned run allowed, and that was the home run in that game against Clemson, where he unfortunately, that was the end of that game, but was pretty much lights out for a while there to start the season. And then once you kind of got into the thick of SEC play, games against Alabama, series against A&M, started giving up some runs, had a few rougher outings, but kind of came back to form, in these past couple weeks and put together some solid performances. Enough so, especially after what his amount of work through 5 total innings. 6 total innings last weekend against Missouri that rightfully earned him the ability to be put in the starting lineup for this weekend. And again, South Carolina has been playing this TBA card on the 3rd game, not Sunday, but the 3rd game of the series for so much of the season that, as Jack Feltry mentioned in that last segment there, you were taking a bit of a gamble in going for Gainey there, given the fact that he had not started a single game for you this year, had never started an SEC game before, and again, goes out there and has a phenomenal performance that should have been good enough to win. Got the standing ovation coming off the field. Unfortunately, just was not to be, as the bullpen, kind of let things go sideways there. Let's get cut number 10 here, Dave. This is Coach Kingston after the game on Saturday talking about the thought process behind starting Garrett Gainey.
Thought about it, but again, he was doing such a great job finishing games. You've got to start a game, but you also have to be able to finish a game. And again, we're picking where the challenge has been, okay, who can do this role, who can do that role? And we had been thinking about it for a while, and as you know, Matt was his pitching coach at Liberty last year, and Matt's opinion was that for now, at least the first half of the season, he liked him better in this role than he did as a starter at Liberty. But we got to the point, obviously, now where it's a pretty easy decision that we need starters. Now we just got to find the guys that can slam the door shut after he comes out of the game.
So hopefully this is something that can be replicated going forward. I'm very confident he should be in the starting lineup this upcoming weekend at Tennessee, and hopefully the rest of the starters can follow suit on that and get themselves back to form. Because again, you need to take something away from Tennessee. You can't go in there and get swept again. And maybe Garrett Gainey can kind of be the spark for the rest of the pitching staff as we close out the regular season and get set for the postseason, where again, pitching's always important, but pitching is more important than ever in the postseason, because if you do not have good pitching, you're not going to last very long. You'll quickly get bounced from Hoover. You'll quickly get bounced from a regional, and then you'll be having to endure the long off season watching other teams in your league make deep runs in the NCAA tournament at the end of the day. So again, great performance by Garrett Gainey. I like his emotion. I don't know. Did he do? I don't recall seeing him do the machine gun at any point this weekend. But that is always really fun to see. Wears his heart on his sleeve. I appreciate that. Now, again, that can be a negative thing when things aren't going well. But a great performance on Saturday, and hopefully that can be something he rolls in to his next couple of outings as well. Speaking of pitching on Saturday, Atlanta Braves in action, taking on the New York Mets, and Max Fried, 7 innings. No hits, no runs, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. Now, unfortunately, he had to come out of the game. and was not able to complete the no-no. And but what a string of games that Max Fried has been on as of late. And certainly you'd like to see him stay in there and try and complete the no-hitter for himself. He was at 109 pitches, which, you're kind of teetering there with still 2 outs, with still 2 more innings to go. But Fried understood why he was removed from the game and didn't seem too upset about it. Let's go with cut number 13 here, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I was not very good with my command at all. I was just shooting a lot of pitches all over, just felt like for a hitter or two throughout there, just kind of lost it a little bit. And, when you're going 3-2 on a lot of guys and you're walking 3 to 4, you're probably not going to be able to efficiently get through 9. So I had a good idea. Was fortunate enough that a lot of the balls, some of the hard hit balls just went at guys too, but felt like I was just trying to keep us in the game as long as I possibly could.
So we could feel things starting to trend a little bit in the wrong direction there, and still was able to get through 7 innings without giving up a hit. Unfortunately, the team no-hitter was not able to be preserved. Raisel Iglesias, with 2 outs at the bottom of the 9th, did give up a solo shot to J.D. Martinez. Braves were still able to win the game, but unfortunately they could not, get the team no-hitter there. But for Max Fried, what a string of games he's been able to put together as of late. We've known how good he is. Now, his first outing of the year did not go very well at all up there on the road in Philadelphia, but he's truly come into form and showing you how good he is, which we know how good he is. Like, that's no secret at all, but really, really putting on, his best performances here as of late. You go back to 2 starts ago out there in Seattle, has a no-hitter through 6 innings. Now, he had a higher pitch count at that point in time, so it was very much understandable pulling him in the 6th inning there. Unfortunately, the Rays were not able to preserve the team no-hitter in that one as well. And then just a couple weeks ago, through the full 9-inning game against the Marlins, which is not an easy thing to do. But again, Max Fried just truly looking like the best pitcher on this Braves staff, which, again, when you're down Spencer Strider, unfortunately, you hope that Max Fried can go out there and give you his best stuff, which he's certainly been able to do, and hopefully that continues on for, we're still early on in the season. I mean, baseball's been going on or Major League Baseball at least, has been going on for just over a month. It's a very long season, but hopefully, Max Fried can keep this form up as the year goes along. I'll remind you that the craft beer card, it is indeed back. You can spend $30 a brewery at 12 different craft beer locations. $360 value, all yours for just $79. Go online to 1075thegame.com, click on the Sweet Deals tab, and purchase the craft beer card. Asked if you want to weigh in on what's happened this past weekend with Gamecock baseball, feel free. 803-404-6100. We'll get to some of your thoughts on the Firehouse Subs text line coming up next to wrap up hour number 1. It is the Extra Point. Tyler headed along with you on your Monday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points Outhead along with you on your Monday, wrapping up our number one. We'll continue the baseball conversation as we get into hour number two and also talk a little bit of football as well. But first, I asked for your reactions. And, of course, Gamecock Larry ready to go with his analysis of what happened this weekend. Gamecock Larry, what's on your mind this morning?
Well, I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of baseball. I've seen a lot of Gamecock baseball. I've seen a lot of good baseball, and I've seen some bad baseball. But I ain't never seen anything as bad as we had this weekend at Founders Park. We could get along with the home runs we gave up. But when you give up 26 walks, 7 hit batsmen, 39 runs, I don't know how many hits in 3 games, you're going to lose. And I'm going to tell you, there's something going on between the players and the coaching staff. There's something going on. I don't care what they say or what anybody says. I am not stupid. I'm an old man. But there is not communication. That is not respect from the players to the pitching coach to the head coach. There is something going on. If we go to Tennessee and get swept, we won't even make the NCAA. And that might be a blessing for the Gamecocks. Because Ray Tanner's got to see this is not Gamecock baseball. This is not fundamental baseball. The 10th weekend series of the season, the last one coming up, and they don't even have a week. They don't even have a weekend starting rotation, and they might finally. Well, they don't even have a starting lineup. I don't. And these. I mean, they may be good coaches, but they're not Gamecock baseball coaches. We could have done a whole lot better with Holbrook. What has Kingston done since he's been there? He ran the pitching coach off we had the last couple of years to Ole Miss, or I think it's Mississippi State, because the pitching coach was good, but he couldn't get along. He didn't go along with Kingston's analytics. And Kingston hired this one we got now. But when you do, a weekend series like this, I don't know when I've ever seen one like this. And Coach Tanner, I love you. You helped build a Gamecock reputation. You helped build a Gamecock program, and I think you should have kept Holbrook. At least he was a Gamecock fundamental baseball coach. Where this guy came from, I don't know. I don't care, but I know one thing: he needs to go. That's all I got to say. He needs to go. Take his pitching coach with him. I love my Gamecocks. I'll always pull for the Gamecocks, but this time, you know what? I hate to say it, but we may get swept in Tennessee. Man, the only way we'll go to the NCAA is win the SEC championship. That's all I got to say. I love my Gamecocks. I love all y'all. But Kingston got to go now, or at least at the end of the season. Another buyout, Ray, that you used to them. I love you. Go Gamecocks. Talk to you later.
Appreciate it as always, there, Gamecock Larry. And by the way, happy birthday. I think for anybody that knows Gamecock Larry, he is the eternal optimist. No matter how bleak things may look, he's always going to give you that glimmer of hope, that ray of sunshine. So if Gamecock Larry is down on the team, and he thinks they're going to go to Knoxville and get swept this weekend against number 1 Tennessee. I think that tells you all you need to know about where most of the fan base is. Got a lot of you weighing in who share very similar thoughts to what Gamecock Larry was just saying there on the Left Chevrolet phone lines, 803-404-6100. And it does beg the question of, how hot of a seat is Kingston on right now? And I'm not sitting here saying fire him or don't fire him, whatever it may be, but I think it's a legitimate question to ask. And I do think that the what happens over the course of the next couple of weeks between Knoxville, between Hoover, and assuming you're going to be in the NCAA tournament, how that goes, does have a big effect on what the future of this team is going to be. Now, I don't necessarily mean that from Kingston's standpoint, what it means for assistants. Do you keep Matt Williams? Do you move on from him if things suddenly don't start getting better? I don't know. There's a lot more questions with answers with this team, which is so frustrating because we are, again, heading in the last weekend of the regular season, and you hate that you're still having these conversations that you don't have a sure, starting rotation for your pitching lineup, because good teams don't have this issue. And again, South Carolina, from the RPIs and all the metrics and stuff, has been a good team all season long. They're still ranked right now, 24th, according to D1 Baseball, but it just doesn't feel like they're that good of a team. And we saw that on display this past weekend. So, again, plenty more thoughts on this. We'll hear more from Kingston coming up in hour number 2 as we react to, again, first home sweep, or first time getting swept at home in SEC play since 2019. All that coming up in hour number 2. It's the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Hour number 2 of the Extra Point. Welcome back in. Tyler Head with you here on this Monday morning, continuing to react to a rough weekend out of Founders Park as the Gamecocks get swept by Georgia. All three falling to the Dogs. Again, first time getting swept at home since Vandy came in here back in May of 2019. The big question coming away from the weekend is, how do you respond? How do you move forward and obviously try and improve, try and be better on the road against Tennessee? But can you be? Is this team just plagued with inconsistent pitching to where, again, as you get into the postseason between the SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament, you're going to get exposed if your pitching's not good. No, getting exposed, you're not going to go far. You're not going to make it out of regional. Likely not going to go far in Hoover. You know what I mean? It's a tough place to be in. And, you know, you felt like you had a nice wave of momentum coming into the weekend. Again, you took 3 out of the last 4 series. You won in 2 places that historically hadn't been good to you, in Gainesville and the other Columbia against Missouri the other weekend. Now, again, pitching against Missouri was not great, but your offense did enough to, you know, make up for that and mask that a little bit, to where you're still able to walk away with the win, which is good. But we were concerned going into the weekend, and obviously it reared its ugly head. And, you know, now you just got to wonder how you move past this. Let's go with cut number 2 here, Dave. Here's Coach Kingston on the message he gave to the team coming away from the weekend series.
Both, a little bit of both. I talked to him about how this game was not meant to pat you on the back. This is a game built on failure that will beat you up, give you a lot of highs and give you a lot of lows, and you need to handle it properly. And this game will make a man out of you if you play it long enough. And this was one of those weekends that we took a lot of gut punches that we got to make sure we grow from and become tougher from. Again, tip my cap to Georgia. It's amazing what they've done. They've turned that program around in very short order thanks to the transfer portal. It's probably the best offense we saw all year, and we've got to pitch better regardless of who we're playing.
And he mentioned it right there at the end. That's why I think this series loss, is especially glaring, because they have a Georgia team that surpassed you in 1 year. Again, with Coach Strickland, they underachieved for basically a decade. Couldn't even make it to a super regional with them, which that's unacceptable in Athens. And now you bring in Wes Johnson as a first-year coach, and he goes out there and, again, Georgia looks like a much better team. A team that if I'm having to fill out an Omaha bracket right now, I'm probably putting Georgia in it because they look that good. And when you're South Carolina, again, in year number 7 with Coach Kingston, saying, well, how's that team better than us? Having tore it down and started over again. It's frustrating. I get it. And I'm worried, that this past weekend has South Carolina teetering. And going to Tennessee to take on the number 1 team in the country in, this upcoming weekend is just going to push them off the ledge. And then you're limping into Hoover. And then, let's say you get swept in Knoxville. You get bounced after a game or 2 in Hoover. Then you're limping in the postseason on whatever destination you got, end up sending to for a regional. Because at that point, you obviously wouldn't be hosting. Not going to be hosting as of right now. I mean, nobody's going to expect him to go far. I don't know if anybody would expect him to win a game. It depends on the matchup and who's in the regional with them and all that kind of stuff. But just the confidence would be dead, not only with the fan base, but I got to imagine it's pretty bad in the locker room as well. Baseball is definitely a game of momentum. In South Carolina, as much as they seem to have coming into the weekend series against Georgia, I mean, it's kind of come to a screeching halt. Because, again, if you're a team that is going to make a deep run in the postseason, those are the kind of teams you have to beat. You have to, and again, only a couple weeks ago, they did win against Kentucky. We'll give them credit there. But I don't want to say this like cancels it out, but in a very much what have you done for me lately kind of sport, what you did for me lately this weekend wasn't good. In fact, it was pretty darn ugly. And again, you're not going to get anywhere in the postseason if your pitching is not straightened out. And, you know, when we talk about teams trying to make runs in the postseason, everybody likes to bring up the example of Ole Miss a couple seasons ago, right? Ole Miss was clearly the team that nobody was expecting to make any kind of run in the NCAA tournament, you know, at the midpoint of the regular season. They looked pretty bad, to be honest with you. And they're kind of used as this example of, hey, anything can happen, and if you get hot at the right time, then you can go on this run. But I think it's important to note, Ole Miss ended their regular season extremely strong. Despite starting out the regular season not in a good way, they ended the regular season extremely strong. They won 8 of their final 11 regular season games, 5 of those coming against ranked opponents. South Carolina, yeah, when you're looking at how this is adding up, again, if you can even get one game in Knoxville this weekend, those numbers would pale in comparison to what Ole Miss did a season ago. So I don't think there's necessarily an apt comparison there compared to what the Rebs did a couple seasons ago and where South Carolina is as of right now. You know, you just got to clean the slate, hopefully, and try and start fresh for another weekend series in Knoxville. Let's go with cut number 9 here, Dave. Here is Coach Kingston talking about just having to wipe the slate clean.
That's what you have to do. You have to wipe the slate clean. Again, as I mentioned to the team, we've had some really high highs, and this was a low low. It's the first time we've gotten swept this year, and again, I thought we were going to win the game going to the 8th inning. I thought it was going to be another one of those where, okay, we found a way to keep our head above water, and we'll just move on, and the RPI stays in the top 12, and we'll be fine. Look at the big picture, but those last 2 innings were a nightmare, and we're going to have to handle them properly. I asked anybody in that huddle, anybody ready to quit? Do you think the season's over? The answer obviously is no. We've got one more regular season, then we've got the tournament, and then we've got the NCAA tournament. And at the end of the day, in the big picture, the goal every year is get to the NCAA tournament and then get hot, you know, for 5 games and find your way to Omaha. So all of that is still ahead of us. But this is a gut punch this weekend that our guys have to learn how to handle and respond properly to.
Easier said than done. You know, that is obviously the old cliche, I guess, when you're at a low point, saying, we just got to wipe the slate clean and move on to the next thing. Okay, I get it. That's what you're supposed to say. Go out there and do it. Show that to us this weekend, because you have a fan base. I mentioned this, you know, team teetering. You have a fan base that's teetering right now. A fan base that again, loves this team so much and invest themselves into this team so much each and every year. They just want that reciprocated back. They want to see those results on the field. Again, you've had your moments this year, but this pitching has always been a question mark this entire season. And unfortunately, it reared its ugly head this past weekend against Georgia. Want to get more of your thoughts. Got another caller out on the Love Chevrolet phone lines, 803-404-6100. Let's go to Jack. Jack, what is on your mind about this Gamecock baseball team?
Hey, bro. Thank you, Todd. First of all, I want to say happy birthday to Gamecock Larry. We love you, man, and pray that God continues to bless you with many more years. But that's my partner. I listen to him every morning. I try to get out to my truck because I know he come on very early. But I have a little disagreement with him when it comes down to him speaking that, you know, there's a problem, you know, in the field of play with the coaches and the team, or the coaches, or whatever the case may be. It comes down to this, man, in baseball, bro. You have to play your game. You got to go back to the lab and play Gamecock baseball. It's not so much a coaching. When you make the numbers of errors and mistakes and not hitting the ball in play when players on base and we're not getting runs in, that's half. That's half of the problem. It don't have nothing to do with the coaching side of the table. They can't play the game. When you make the numbers of errors that you made out there on that field out there, our pitching, we might have had struggles, but we had some high points, just like Coach say. We had some good things. I mean, mid part of the season, we saw the comeback. I mean, you went down to Florida, you won. You went over to the other Columbia, and you took that one. I mean, who would have thought in the beginning of the season that Carolina would have took Vandy? We know Vandy is a good baseball team year-round like Carolina. But look where they're struggling at. We got to go back to the lab, shake it off. Shake it off. Gamecock fans, shake it off. Players, shake it off. Let's go to the lab and make it right for this game coming up. We're not out of it. We are out of it if you don't go and play it. If you don't go and play, you're out of it. But when you get out there, play ball. Stop making all these mistakes and errors and let's move the balls around on the bases. That's all. Hey, take your hat off to Georgia. It's a power. You wouldn't have never thought Georgia would be where they at right now today with their first year coach, but he said it. They went to the portal, they pulled guys. Hey, they played. They played hard, they played strong, and Carolina was still even when they was down 5, 6, however many runs. We made a great comeback. But it just the idea, hey, mistakes happen. It cost us. The pitchers was not as great all weekend. Hey, I don't take nothing from them. I think they're gonna do well. I'm looking forward to get 2 of them out of Texas. I think we can turn it around. I think we can do something here and tip our hats to those young men again. They play hard, they strong, and they're a unit, and I believe in them. Go Gamecocks.
All right, appreciate the call there, Jack. So Jack is on a little bit more the optimistic side. And look, this team has shown you abilities this season to beat some of the best in the SEC, like Vanderbilt, like Kentucky. Again, 2 tough road trips at Florida and Missouri not long ago. So that ability is there. Again, it's just the pitching is that big question mark, that big concern. And that does come back to the coaches to a degree. Now, again, as I talked about with Jack a little bit earlier, they're not the ones out there pitching. They're not the ones out there throwing strikes and balls and all that kind of stuff, but they are responsible for the game plan, obviously, the development, and, correcting issues with what they see on the mound. And unfortunately, this is something that's persisted this entire season. And, again, is a big concern as you get into postseason play coming up very, very soon. But Jack's confident South Carolina can go on the road and take 2 out of 3 against Tennessee up there in Knoxville. So we'll see what happens. They do have a couple days to regroup. I believe they had yesterday off. And then they'll get back to work on these next couple of days, and then head up to Knoxville on Thursday and see if they can try and close the regular season on a strong note. We'll have plenty more baseball conversation as the day goes along. Do want to switch gears though. Coming up, talk some football in the next segment as we kind of reflect on South Carolina's spring and sitting in a pretty good place right now, I would say. That's up next. Baseball, as I mentioned, against Tennessee this upcoming weekend, Thursday and Friday. Game starting at 6:30, pregame coverage starting at 6:15 right here on the game. And then Saturday, 1 o'clock first pitch with pregame coverage starting at 12:45 all right here on the game as the Gamecocks wrap up their regular season. Football talk next is the extra point here on the game. Welcome back in. It's the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday morning here on The Game. Reminder once again, you can listen to us wherever you are on the 107.5 The Game app. Just give us a download on the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store. And again, take us with you wherever you go. Also check us out on The Game TV, powered by Integrated Media and sponsored by our friends over at Shepherd's Glass. We have entered I don't want to say the quietest portion of the college football calendar, but one of the slower periods of the year when it comes to college football. The month of May is where most, if not all, teams around the country finally give their players some time off, a couple weeks, the entire month. Somewhere close to that. A little bit of reprieve, go home and see family, graduations, all that kind of stuff going on. So the news cycle is obviously a little bit slower as everybody's obviously wrapped up. Everybody's obviously wrapped up spring practice, spring games are in the book, all that kind of stuff. You obviously still have some movement in the transfer portal, but for the most part, this is the period of time where everybody collectively catches their breath before, we jump into things like SEC Media Days coming up here in a couple of months, and then we're on the fast track to the season starting this year in late August because of the way the calendar falls. And again, this is kind of a time to really kind of reflect on things and truly evaluate where your program is and how good you should feel about it heading into this upcoming fall. And reading Gamecock Central this past weekend, there was a very interesting story by Scott Davis. And he had a headline that South Carolina survived the month of April. And at first, I looked at the word survive and I thought, well, that's a little extreme. But in thinking about it more, I get where he's coming from, and I get what this sentiment is. And I kind of thought about this from my own perspective. Well, what does surviving mean through the month of April, which, again, is where pretty much everybody is doing their spring practice activities, spring games, all that kind of stuff. And when I think about, what would surviving in April mean to me, I do think South Carolina has certainly checked those boxes. First and foremost, you made it through healthy. You have no concerning injuries, especially to anybody that is expected to be a starter this upcoming fall. Now, of course, you had guys like Rocket Sanders that came in with an injury that are still rehabbing and all that. So there was no expectation of them participating in spring. But even with a guy like him, we know what he can do. We've seen it for several seasons out there at Arkansas. Give him all the time he needs, get him healthy, get him on the field this upcoming fall, and hopefully he's ready to rock and roll, in game number one. But outside of that, you didn't lose anybody to anything devastating. I bring up Jalen Nichols from a season ago who was lost in spring. I think it was actually in the spring game where he got hurt. And, of course, that set off just this chain reaction of what would be an ungodly amount of injuries at the offensive line's position specifically as the season goes along. So, again, you escaped. Relatively healthy across the board. Some guys got nicked up here and there, but nothing overly concerning as we head into the summer. As well, you had new faces that looked really good. That you heard a lot of things about. Not just mean new faces of guys coming into the program, guys that are stepping up into starting roles. Lenora Sellers, who is going to be quarterback number one out of spring practice at least. But again, we expect him to be the starter when the season does roll around. Looked good, looked the part. Good things heard about him. Seems to be emerging as that leader that you want your starting quarterback to be. Oscar Attaway, who has gotten a lot of the work because of Rocket Sanders rehabbing from his injury. A lot of positives coming out about him. Dylan Stewart comes in as a 5-star. Going to have a lot of hype and a lot of anticipation about what he's going to be able to do with that edge spot. To this point, has lived up to the billing. We saw that freak athleticism on display in the spring game. And every indication that we've heard from coaches and media and stuff like that, no, this guy's a dude. He's gonna be a game wrecker. Now again, we have to wait and see that, but I'm just going off of, again, where we stand right now in the spring. You feel good about where you're at with that. You brought in so many so many wide receivers in the transfer portal. And, you know, Larverdane seems to be doing well. Jared Brown, optimism about him. You know, again, just plenty of new faces that, you know, they give you optimism. Linebacker, Demetrius Knight, Bengali Kamara, guys like that. You know, our guy Monkel Goodwine, who was in with us here just a couple weeks ago, showed some promise in the spring game too, and heard good things about him going through spring. Got a couple guys in the offensive line that are new additions that could be factors in to, you know, to one of those starting roles like Torselli Simpkins. So, you know, these new faces that you brought in, because look, here's the thing. When you bring in guys from the transfer portal, they're not all going to pop or you know, they're not all going to be big-time contributors. Some guys are going to come in and you're never going to hear from them again because they just get buried on the depth chart. But the more of these guys that, you know, come in and can contribute, hopefully the better off you're going to be. Because, again, you bring them in for a reason to address an area of need or to build depth or whatever. So if those guys can come in and live up to what you would need them to be, that, in turn, should hopefully make the whole team better. And my last point for surviving the month of April that stands out to me is you came out of the portal situation with a net positive at the end of the day. You know, Beamer, as they do each and every spring, has these exit meetings with players after the spring game where has, you know, sits down with them and says, hey, here's what we've seen out of you. Here's what we project you're going to be. Here's, you know, what the fall is going to look like for you as of right now. And that, of course, opens the door for guys to say, hey, you know, I'm not going to get my playing time this fall. Doesn't look like it. Let me go put my name in the portal and, you know, see where I can go. Or, hey, I don't like this situation. Don't like the fit. Don't like what they're asking me to do. Let me go try my hand somewhere else. And again, you're going to have guys that transfer out every single, not only spring, but in the December as well, which South Carolina did have a few of those guys go. But for the spring portion, at least, you lost Keenan Nelson Jr. You lost, you know, Sidney Fugar. I mean, you didn't lose anything that is, or Andrew Tuazama last week, excuse me. You didn't lose anything that's like, oh my God, how are we going to replace that guy? That's no disrespect to those guys because you loved having them for depth and all that. And maybe they could have developed into something later on. You know, that was kind of the plan with Fugar at least, but you get it. They didn't see their opportunity coming this fall and they wanted to go somewhere else so they're going to play. I can respect that. I can understand that. And I don't think anybody is angry at them for wanting to leave. But when you look at, again, what the contribution of those guys was going to be, you don't feel like you lost a lot. And you feel pretty good about those spots despite those guys not being there. Yeah, that's one less body in the room for some of those places, but even still, you feel fine. And on the flip side of things, you went out there and got more wide receivers. You know, as I mentioned, even if Carolina got nobody out of the portal this spring, you'd still feel pretty good about that wide receiver room. But you bring in a guy in Vendarius Jacobs from Florida State, 4-star kid, didn't really get a whole lot of time on the field at Florida State last year, but has high potential upside and is somebody that can be around here for a couple years, can develop and maybe turn into something over the course of time here at Carolina. And then you go out and get Devon Campbell, who addresses, you know, I'd say not the glaring area of need, but one you was certainly wanted to fill with a lengthy wide receiver that can be more of your, you know, down the field type of threat, getting jump balls, contested catches, that kind of stuff. So you bring in Devon Campbell, who I don't even think we understand what his full potential is because he was playing on such a bad offense a season ago out there in Nevada. So, you know, again, you add to a room that was already very full. If nothing else, that just increases competition, which at the end of the day is never really a bad thing. Now, again, this has to translate onto the field, but at least heading into the summertime, you should feel at least halfway decent about where this team's going to be. And, you know, of course, those opinions can change once the season gets here. But as of right now, I would say most people should feel somewhat confident in what they have with South Carolina as of right now for surviving the month of April. Ceilings and floors. We talked a lot about that last week. One team in the SEC really sticking out to me is one that we're not really paying attention to that we should be. That's coming up next. Is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on The Game. Welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Head with you here on this Monday. Welcome back to the baseball conversation coming up at the top of the 11 o'clock hour. Wes and Crystal jumping here with me for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. But I want to revisit something that we talked about a lot last week. We had a couple of sound clips that we played across several of our shows from the Andy Staples podcast on 3. Now, Andy Staples, one of the premier voices in in college football when it comes to national commentary, and one of the big dogs out there at On 3, and he and Cody Belair, who's the big recruiting guy at On 3, did about a 2-hour podcast. I got a chance to really listen to the whole thing this past weekend, driving back and forth up there to Darlington, of the ceiling and floor of every team in the SEC. So the ceiling being what their potential best season could be this year, and the floor being, of course, what the worst case scenario for them could be. And we talked a lot about what, Belair specifically had to say about Lenore Sellers, being a dark horse Heisman candidate, and reminding a lot of Anthony Richardson and all that kind of stuff. And, him kind of being the catalyst to South Carolina's success this upcoming season, which makes a lot of sense given the fact that he is a quarterback. And if he can live up to that potential, then, that would certainly hopefully bode well for South Carolina this season. They had Carolina's ceiling listed at 8-4, and then they gave them a floor of 4-8, which, if you're going to take right there in the middle, that's 6-6, which I think a lot of people, if you had to give an honest answer about where this team could be, I think a lot of people would say somewhere around that 500 category, which you hate to, outright already hand yourself 5 or 6 losses, 4 months before the season starts. But it's a tough schedule for South Carolina. And, it's hard to gauge teams in the offseason because, of course, so much change with the portal and all that kind of stuff that, if Carolina could come out of the gate and they could look like the best team in the country, and I think people would change their opinions pretty fast. But what we know about this team as of right now, I think a lot of people are just looking at this and saying, get back to a bowl game. Just take at least that step back in the right direction. Last year not making a bowl game was tough. And felt like a step back from what you had done the first couple of seasons. So, if you went 6-6 and made a bowl game, that's at least a step back in the right direction on what is a very, very tough schedule for the Gamecocks. Looking around the rest of the league for these projections, the Georgia, Texas, Alabama, they all have the ceilings of national championships. You have teams like Tennessee and Ole Miss that have the ceiling of making it into the college football playoff, which I think is very realistic. One team stands out to me, though, on this list with their ceiling at 9-3 is Auburn. And in listening to these guys talk about this, it kind of dawned on me, nobody's talking about Auburn this offseason. Nobody's paying attention really at all to what's going out there on the plains. And the more and more I thought about it, I really think they should. Yes, year one was up and down with Hugh Freeze as the head coach out there, highlighted by that, or I guess low-lighted by that drubbing loss by New Mexico State, 31-10, out there at Jordan-Hare Stadium. That certainly wasn't great. And then the next week, they took Alabama to the limit, and outside of a miracle throw by Jalen Milroe, they would have won the Iron Bowl for Hugh Freeze in year number 1. Not only that, they took Georgia to the limit. It took a late Brock Bowers touchdown for, at that time, the number 1 team in the country to go on the plains and get a win. So they showed those flashes of being a really, really good team a season ago. And I think in a lot of people's eyes, overachieved. They made a bowl game. They lost the bowl game to Maryland, which who cares about results of bowl games at this point in time. But I would say that there's some kindling there of what could be quite a fire in Auburn if things get clicking the right way. The biggest thing that's happened this offseason with them, though, is Hugh Freeze taking over play calling. Now, he originally had said he was going to hand those duties over to Philip Montgomery because he wanted to focus more on recruiting, which, by the way, he's done a very good job in recruiting. But that offense wasn't great a season ago. Peyton Thorne took a severe step back from where he was at Michigan State a couple seasons ago. And, despite that, they still, again, nearly beat Alabama and Georgia. But I think Hugh Freeze looked at that and said, no. I can do better than this. Fires Philip Montgomery, takes over the play calling themselves, and I I would expect Peyton Thorne to take a significant step forward because, again, it just seemed like he was not clicking with him in that Philip Montgomery offense. And again, he was pretty decent at Michigan State a couple seasons ago. It's a perfectly serviceable quarterback that can certainly get back to that level. And you look at, Hugh Freege's in his first run in the SEC at Ole Miss, he was beating Alabama with Bo Wallace and Chad Kelly. You know what I mean? Like, this guy has the ability to get the most out of his quarterbacks. They got good guys out of the transfer portal. Like, there's a strong sense, in my opinion, that Auburn could be dangerous this year. Now, they have a very tough schedule, as everybody in the SEC does. Of course, you got Georgia, you got Alabama, your typical rivalry games. Again, two teams that you took to the limit last year. So and again, there's a lot of question marks about Alabama. Now, the game's in Tuscaloosa this year, which isn't easy. But if you say, okay, well, Auburn goes in there and beats Kalen DeBoer in his first year in the Iron Bowl, I'm not going to be shocked by it. Biggest question mark games for me are probably Missouri on the road. We'll see if Missouri is more than a one-year wonder, and then hosting Oklahoma. Oklahoma, there's a lot of questions about them as well. But if Auburn won both those games, I wouldn't be shocked either. And putting them at 9-3 for their ceiling, which is interesting because they didn't list it as a college football playoff berth type thing. I feel like 9-3 in the SEC should be enough to get you in the playoff. Now, again, it depends on what other conferences do and what factors are at play around you. But if you go 9-3 in the SEC in a 12-team college football playoff, I feel like you're at least knocking on the door. Now, am I going to pencil in Auburn for the college football playoff? I'm not. But I think there's a lot of reason to look at this Auburn team and think that they can make serious noise this upcoming season. And I'm not cheering for it. I don't want Auburn to be a powerhouse team, but again, I just think they're really flying under the radar. And if they jump up and have a good season, well, you can say that you'll know that I was on them before a lot of people were coming into the 2024 season. So I don't know, something to keep an eye on. Should be interesting to see what happens with Hugh Freeze in year number 2 out there on the Plains. We'll wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. It was a wild and fun weekend at the Darlington Raceway, and we got treated to a classic race yesterday in the Goodyear 400. Recap that, let you hear some of the sound of what happened yesterday out at Darlington. Coming up next is The Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Monday on the Game.
again to catch him, but Brad Keselowski pulling away. They're getting ready to lose their minds in Rochester Hills, Michigan. Here's Keselowski off the corner.
The drought for Brad Keselowski is about to come to an end, and Ford is going back to victory lane. Off for final time. Brad Keselowski under the checkered flag, and Brad Keselowski has won the Goodyear 400 Darlington Raceway. Career win number 36 for Brad Keselowski. He wins over Ty Gibbs, Josh Berry, Denny Hamlin, and Chase Briscoe.
That was the call yesterday out at the Darlington Raceway. Yes, indeed. Brad Keselowski winning the Goodyear 400. Very significant win for Brad Keselowski. First time as a driver owner, and his first win since Talladega back in 2021, was on the longest winless streak of his entire career at 110 races, and was able to withstand the entire day. Very gritty, grind out performance by Brad Keselowski. Had a good long run car, was kind of running up there in the top three pretty much the entire day. But what more people are talking about coming away from the race on Sunday is what happened a few laps before that. Cut number 15 here, Dave.
Busher was in the middle of the racetrack. Reddick went way wide up the banking. Gets a great run from the top of two. Busher moves low to present the entrance to three. Too late. Reddick's there. They're wheel to wheel, and they both are making contact. Both bouncing off each other in the corner.
Off of turn number 4, they stay side by side. Back to the advantage, back to the lead to Busher. Tyler Reddick right there, but here comes Brad.
Keselowski to the inside. Reddick is off the pace. Reddick is off the pace. He's got a tire down on the front of that machine. He comes up and skirts the wall. Tyler Reddick hopes for victory lane, goes away.
Now it's an RFK 1-2 punch at the front of the field. Busher has a problem. Busher has a tire issue. Brad Keselowski to the lead in 3.
A lot of chaos in those last couple laps, fighting for the lead there. Chris Busher, who had made a few laps before his own amazing move when Keselowski and Reddick got together coming off turn 4, goes 3 wide, goes all the way down to the paint on the front stretch to take the lead, and then leading there, Reddick had the better car, dive bombs him into turn number 3, attempts to do a slide job, which is where you dive in really deep into the corner and slide up in front of the person you're trying to pass. Unfortunately, didn't get all of it and ended up sliding right into Chris Busher. Both those guys getting into each other, getting up in the wall, cutting their own tires in the process, which is what you heard there about them getting off the pace. And that allowed Brad Keselowski to get around both of those guys and go on for the win. So it's funny. Jen Jensen and I, we were in Tyler Reddick's pit. He had the first stall on pit road, or the last stall on pit road, which is at pit exit. So we're down there watching the end of this race, and I'm down there, hoping to get the reaction of, Tyler Reddick's crew if they end up winning this race. And we're turning around, we're watching this on the big screen as it's playing out and seeing the cars go by in turn number 1. So this happens. Obviously, Reddick and Busher not going to win the race. Watch Keselowski proceed to take the checkered flag, and I take off just sprinting towards pit road because they have a little media scrum there in after the race where you can talk to the top 5 finishers while the winning driver's over doing his burnout and going to victory lane and all that kind of stuff. And I had an inkling that something was going to go down between Chris Busher and Tyler Reddick. And look, I've been on many pit roads in my media career, covering NASCAR races and stuff like that. I had never been a part of, and I don't want to call it a fight because it wasn't really a fight, but a kerfuffle, a scuffle, if you were, of some emotions running high on pit road after the race. So as I'm getting to pit road, because Busher's car is pulled down towards one of the pit entrance areas where you can walk onto pit road, I just see a rush of people just swarming towards Tyler Reddick's car, and a lot of commotion, a lot of noise. I could not see past the wall of people. There was just a mass of bodies surrounding Tyler Reddick's car, and I thought somebody was punching somebody. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to get in there. I'm trying to get my camera in. I'm trying to, get a glimpse of what's going on. Just so many people there. And it ended up honestly kind of funny if you go back and watch the video of it, and you can find it on Fox NASCAR's on Twitter where, Buescher comes over rightfully very upset. I mean, and again, he's the guy that lost a week ago by 3 inches to Kyle Larson. He's had a rough go of it the past couple of weeks, and he goes over there to Tyler Reddick, very angry, rightfully so, and, says, man, what the heck? And Reddick, who kept his helmet on, which is very smart because Buescher's a lot bigger than him, immediately apologized. He's like, man, look, I tried this move. I saw it wasn't going to work. I tried to back out. I got into. I'm so sorry. And, when you're that fired up and that emotional as Chris Buescher was, you're almost you're expecting the person to argue with you, right? You have your point. They have their point. You're going to disagree about it. And then you're probably going to punch each other. Like, that's how these kind of fights go. And watching this play out, it's so funny because Buescher was just like, he didn't know how to react. He was like, oh, well, you're giving me the apology that I was kind of hoping for. And he brings up the point that, hey, you got the winner sticker on your door, which Reddick does, which means he's in NASCAR's playoffs coming up later this fall. And Buescher does not have that yet. And again, that's 2 weeks in a row that's come close to getting that and not, not being able to get it done. But that was definitely the most unique disagreement I've seen play out there, after a NASCAR race. But so cool to be a part of it. Again, a lot of things going on. A lot of people here, there, and everywhere on pit road after the race. But nevertheless, it was a really fun experience. Again, myself and Jen Jensen were out there all day yesterday. I was out there on Saturday for the Xfinity Series race. So a lot of good racing action. Hopefully, if you got to go out there, you enjoyed it. I know we gave away some tickets. I know Jen was trying to get out and see some of the ticket winners over the course of the day yesterday, before the race. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And man, Darlington's just such a fun track. They call it the track that's too tough to tame for a reason. It's just an old school, gritty kind of track that harkens back to the old days of NASCAR, which is very, very fun to see. And I think we got treated to an incredible, incredible race there yesterday. So very fun to be a part of. Again, thank you so much to Josh Harris, president of the track, for allowing us to be out there and do everything that we get to do out there. Appreciate our friends at Schroeder's Towing that sponsored us for being out there on Friday as well. So it's a fun weekend overall out there at Darlington Raceway, and look forward to going back there this upcoming fall for Labor Day weekend and the Cookout Southern 500. More baseball conversation coming up next. We'll get into it with the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Also talk some more football as well on your Monday here on The Game. 11 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Chris Clark, and Wes Mitchell. You know, Wes says, I might be late, but right on the money each and every time as the intro is playing, coming through the doors.
Wes and not Chris. I'm excited. Do you know what I'm referencing? Wes texted me. You were at all 3 baseball games this weekend or just 2?
I was at 2.
Okay. Well, it's your fault that they lost those 2. The other one, I don't know why.
Wait, which one were you not at?
Middle one.
Okay.
There's really no rhyme or reason. They unfortunately lost all of them, but we can't blame Wes for the other 2. But I think it was Friday. Yeah, it must have been Friday. There's a phenomenon that our
I texted you Friday after the game Thursday.
Yes. There you go. That was it. Friday after the game Thursday. And he got called Chris at the game.
Okay.
Normally, when there's a mix-up, people call me Wes. Happens
right.
about 98.7% of the time.
Wonder why that is.
We can't figure it out.
And see, now we have the Game TV, sponsored by Shepherd's Glass, powered by Integrated Media, where people can see your face and who's talking.
They've been seeing us on GC Live.
Yeah,
that's also
We've
true.
been doing the podcast for a long time. We used to be able to be anonymous.
True.
And, you know, around Gamecock country, we do get recognized.
Do we need to get you guys name tags, maybe?
Well, I think Wes is more popular. And so people
not anymore, apparently.
People just mix us up. Yeah, maybe I'm painting.
By the way, Chris is kidding, though. Shout out to the very nice couple that I spoke with. Very nice guy. I took him completely off guard when he said, "Hey, Chris, listen to the show. Good stuff." And I just shook my hand out. I said, "Wes."
That's what I try to do.
Now,
it's hard to know how to react.
Now, have you ever played along and just pretended to be Wes when people have done that?
No. Like one time, it happened at the Lancaster County Gamecock Club. Somebody's like, "Wes, love your show." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm Chris." And he didn't hear me, so he just kept going. So it's fine.
Yeah. I think Derek Scott mistook me for Elijah one time.
Really?
Yeah. The one time I met Derek
Your hair
Scott.
is not as long.
Yeah, we look
we
look very different. But I walked away from that. I'm like, I think he thinks I'm Elijah.
And
that's okay.
Speaking of meeting people, and shout out to that couple. We always love talking to people. But Tyler got to meet somebody, too.
Well, it's again. I was going to say I've met him before, but
you got to see our guy Lenore Sellers.
Yes, I was.
How about his shirt?
That's right. If you ain't first, you're last. Very fit in with the vibe.
Was that his first time at Darlington?
I'm
probably
not
not.
sure.
Probably not.
Now it was very interesting. For one, he sticks out like a sore pink thumb on pit road because he's so tall. Because I was this was right before the race, before pre-race ceremonies. I'm just hanging out there on the grid, and I turned around. I'm like, there's Lenore Sellers. Went over there, talked to him, talked to his agent, who we've met before, and it's like, hey, good to see you. Took a picture, and then he was hanging out on Brad Keselowski's box for pretty much the entire race. And just saying, Keselowski won, ended a 3-year losing streak. He might be good luck.
Winner.
Saying.
Could be, man. Hey, if you're a winner, you're a winner. I don't know. It might be a sign.
I hope so.
That was pretty cool, though. Just Sellers hanging out, chilling.
He seemed to be enjoying himself.
I love the shirt, though. That was my favorite part of the whole thing.
Well, maybe we need to get Lenoris, if he is a good luck charm, send him to Knoxville this weekend.
That might be a good idea.
Yeah. Not Wes.
And
Wes can't go to Knoxville.
And it's interesting, because I think about it from this perspective, like if Spencer Rattler was at the race a year ago and the attention he would have gotten, because again, he's a guy that had been around, people very familiar with who he is and what he looks like and all that kind of stuff. Sellers has not quite gotten to that point yet. A lot of people know the name, obviously. I don't know if a lot of people could pick him out in a crowd at this point in time. That obviously will change, as it gets more exposure and more recognition, all that kind of stuff. But it is very interesting to look at, that's a guy that's going to be starting in the SEC coming up this fall. And, there were people coming up talking to him and asking for pictures and stuff like that. But, that fame will only grow and grow with the more success that he has.
Oh, it's going to be explosive, honestly, because he's an in-state kid, too. So recognizable, obviously, with the glasses. Like you said, big kid. He's going to be a dynamic player. So, some guys are good players, but maybe are a little bit more just boring as far as their play style. That's not going to be the case with him. So I'm excited for him. I'm excited for Gamecock Nation. There's a chance here for the first time in a long time for Carolina to have a true homegrown quarterback who comes in, waits their turn for a year, and then plays for a number of years, which I think is pretty exciting. And, yeah, this time next year, I'd imagine he would be getting swarmed by people at something like that.
Yeah, there's a ton of excitement around him. I think, he does – when we talk about kind of the package that Lenoris Sellers brings as far as his skill set, I think it extends really to the off the field too. I would not be surprised in the next year or two if this guy becomes one of those players that's kind of the face of college ball, because he's not only – I think he's got a chance to be a great player, but he checks all these boxes as far as like the marketability. He's got the rec specs. He's got, he does things like, hey, I'm going to show up at Darlington wearing a Ricky Bobby shirt and all these type of things. His personality, like he just on and off the field, I think he has that perfect mix of those different things that can make him a super marketable player. So he's definitely, I think by the time he leaves here, he's going to be one of those guys that ranks very highly for Gamecock fans as far as his likability. When you think back, hey, who were your favorite players growing up for kids that are growing up in this era? I think Sellers is going to end up being one of those guys.
Well, and you guys have obviously had the opportunity to talk with him a lot, and we had him in the studio. I think it was in December when he's in here for the Garnet Trust Hour. Like, just a smart kid overall, good head on his shoulders. I don't think he's somebody that you have to worry about getting into like off the field issues or causing problems or anything like that. Like, he kind of has that natural born leader in him, which is what we've heard, from guys on the team, from coaches as well. He's kind of taken over that role before even being named the starter coming away from spring at the beginning of last week. Like, he just has all those intangibles that you want in a good starting quarterback.
If he wasn't so humble, I feel like there's a great opportunity there for a Sellers shirt that's a play on that Ricky Bobby shirt. I feel like that would be very, very well received by the fan base. But I don't know if that fits Sellers' style, honestly. He's so just low-key and chill. I think that would be a little bit too cocky almost, but it would work, I feel like. Now that he's rocked the shirt to the race.
Could be the catalyst. I don't know.
Yeah, no doubt. Guys, we got to talk about baseball, though.
I was trying to avoid it.
No, we have to. I think Chris was trying to steer us back to it.
So you were in person for 2 of these 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
From your perspective, in the crowd, the environment, obviously a huge series, Georgia coming in, what was it like being there?
I mean, I got to be just honest, about like it looked on TV, honestly. I mean, so even, and this is not a shot at the crowd itself. It's not a shot at the fans. This is more about kind of where things are right now, the mindset of everyone. Like, Thursday, it was an 8:00 game on a school night, as someone pointed out to me, which I don't have kids, so I'm just like, a school night. Is that still even what you call it? But it was on a work night.
It is. Can confirm.
It's a work night.
There's a reason Chris wasn't there.
You know what? But still, all right. If South Carolina was playing at Williams-Brice Stadium on a Thursday night against Kentucky, you telling me that...
Well, all schools would be canceled the next day.
You telling me it wouldn't be packed out? Yes, it would have been. So even then, I for a top 25 matchup that we sort of talked about going in, this thing is going to probably play a huge role in who gets to host. Fan base is just, they're not quite in it right now. And then you could just feel, I mean, when people exited on Saturday afternoon, I mean, it was just heads down, like, this is rough. This is rough. And I thought South Carolina controlled most of that game. When Georgia answered back, South Carolina then answered and scored 2 runs and made it 6-4, I think, on the Petrie double.
Yeah.
And then the bottom just fell out, and it felt like Georgia. It felt like Georgia was going to score 20 unanswered. Honestly, like it was just.
And that's the thing for me.
I'm not kidding.
Well, yeah,
Like, it just
you had a 6-4 lead. You had 6 more outs to win the game. And yes, you'd already lost the series, but as we've seen so many times this year, at least get that last game to give you something coming away from the weekend, and to proceed to give up 10 runs unanswered over the course of those couple of innings, and specifically 4 in the top of the ninth, because you go in the ninth inning, you're down 10-6. It's like, okay, if we can keep them from scoring, maybe put something together in the bottom of the ninth, and maybe have a chance here.
You're like, anything could happen.
Anything could happen. You go in the bottom of the ninth down 8 runs, you're like, all right, this is over. So, like, just the whole series as a whole was deflating, but those last couple of innings just really was the final kick in the teeth, it felt like.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Tyler, that's exactly what I was going to bring up next. I think it was 4 series this season where we were coming in here after a series going, all right, well, they lost the series. But if you pick out, I don't even know if it's a silver lining, maybe a bronze one, you do salvage that last game of the series, and that's not insignificant when you're talking about the schedule that South Carolina plays, the RPI that they're still going to have, that you're looking at it right now going, the RPI can maybe save them in some regard. That's 4 wins that you put those in the L column and lose those series, and have a sweep. Like, that's tough, but you're able to salvage those games. Then you actually go on and second half of the season, you start picking up some series wins. And so that's what hurts so bad about this. Like, you definitely wanted to win this series. You could even say, for some reasons, you needed to win this series. You didn't, but, man, not to get one of them, especially when you were up with a chance. You never felt confident. When you're up early in that game, 4-1, you're never like, all right, you feel great about this because you know what Georgia's lineup can do, not only Charlie Condon, but everybody else. And we saw that consistently this weekend. But you needed to get one of those, and now you're having to go just like I feel like every single series this year, the team that South Carolina is about to go play, maybe a couple exceptions, has heated up. They've just moved up in the rankings, so now you're looking at a team that now in South Carolina has a losing record in conference because you couldn't salvage at least one game. Going to Knoxville against now the number 1 team in the country. Tall order.
Not going to be easy. A lot to unpack from this weekend, especially when it comes to pitching. We'll do that coming up next. Also hear what Coach Kingston had to say about it after Saturday's game. It is the Gamecocks Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Monday here on The Game.
All right, if you're getting hungry like I am here at 11:13 a.m. Eastern, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, check out our friends at Firehouse Subs. 14 convenient locations all around the Midlands, so no matter where you're at in the area, there is a Firehouse Subs near you. You can go to firehousesubs.com or download the app. In my opinion, that's the easiest way to not only be able to find the Firehouse Subs closest to you, but also to use the Rapid Rescue to Go. You can use that to avoid the wait, order online, whether it's lunch, dinner, catering, whatever you may need from Firehouse Subs. A new barbecue Cuban sub, Southern Roots with a Cuban twist. It's here for a limited time. Your Firehouse Subs favorites like the turkey bacon ranch, the Italian, the meatball, or your catering order, you can get it all from Firehouse Subs. Again, firehousesubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app. Earn yourself some rewards on future purchases. Firehousesubs.com.
all the above. All the above. We walked too many guys. But again, Gainey showed that you can get it done against them. That's a really good offense, maybe the best we've seen. And I'd have to say, as of right now, it's the best we've seen. I know we have a really good Tennessee club next week, but this is the best we've seen in our ballpark. And we've had Arkansas, and we've had Vanderbilt, and we've had Texas A&M, and we've had a lot of great teams in our ballpark. That was the best offense we saw all year by far. And we just have to rise to the challenge better than we did this weekend.
Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark with you on a Monday. That was Coach Kingston after Saturday's game where getting swept by Georgia. The big story of the weekend revolved around pitching. The one bright spot was Garrett Gainey, who pitched his heart out on Saturday, 5 1/3 innings, giving up 5 hits, 2 runs with 7 strikeouts. Unfortunately, as was the trend of the rest of the weekend, the bullpen did end up letting him down. And Jones in his start on Friday night didn't serve too well. Kimball obviously didn't make it out of the first inning on Thursday night. Like pitching as a whole, outside of Gainey, just a disastrous weekend on all fronts.
Yeah, I don't know, guys. That's like I think there's not much, and people will go watch the press conference and be like, I'm tired of hearing this, tired of hearing that. There's really not much for Kingston to say at this point. It's just when the team got so thoroughly beat as they did, I think, the frankly just almost shocking part about it is it did feel like this team was playing pretty good baseball as of late. And so you go back the last month or so, you've got a win at Florida, a series win at Florida. Arkansas came in and took 2 of 3, but South Carolina split the first 2. You competed in all those games, a 1-run loss in the first one. Kentucky comes in, you take 2 of 3 from them. Potentially had a chance to sweep, but those first 2 games were 2 of the best games of the season, if you ask me. Then we all talked about what happened last week in Missouri, finding a way to get 2 out of 3 at a place you haven't had a lot of success. And then you smash Winthrop in the midweek and leave no doubt. So it felt like this team was playing pretty well coming into this game. And then I think to just get thoroughly outplayed is what hurts. Like South Carolina's lost a lot of games this year that were very close games, and you just said, man, they were 1 hit with a runner in scoring position away from it possibly being different. And fans still hate that, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like it's a completely different feeling than exiting a game and being like, man, they just completely crushed us today. And to get swept at your place go talk to South Carolina fans. Like, that's a proud bunch of Gamecock fans, rightfully so, for their baseball program. So for Georgia to come in, first-year head coach, and just win so decisively, I get why fans are ticked off. Well,
and I think to your point, it's at this point kind of an accumulation of things, So, if South Carolina was like a lock to be a host for a regional, if they were in great shape to be a top 16, something like that, then you would say, God, you got swept. That sucks. That shouldn't happen. But now what you're doing is you're looking at this all through like a prism. You're looking at it in view of how's the entire season gone, right? And fans are frustrated because, yeah, both of them were close, but the reality is you lost the series to Clemson. Didn't get a chance to play Game 3, but you lost the series to Clemson. You had the struggles early in the season where, yes, many of those games are very close. You had 4 or 5 games, including that Clemson series, where it's a 1-run game, and that's the difference between winning the series and losing the series. Then you've also got, I saw a ton of this. It was the most I've seen probably the whole year. You have a lot of big picture takeaways just on the Mark Kingston era in general. And like you said, Wes, this is a proud program. And so I think we've seen this all season, but especially after this past weekend, a lot of takes about just the general state of the program. Hey, we should have been back to Omaha by now. Why is it not happening? The disappointment of needing to win at least one of these games to avoid having a huge mountain to climb this weekend in Knoxville, and you can't do it, And so I think those disappointments are frankly just adding up for the fan base, where you're looking at it going, okay, you haven't made it to Omaha. You've been to 2 Supers since 2018, haven't made it back to Omaha, and that's frustrating. Now, I'm going to also say this. Some people are going to roll their eyes. We do have to wait and see how things are going to play out the remainder of the season. We got to wait because you don't know. This season has been pretty up and down.
Yeah.
With some of the series wins, losses, individual games. So a lot of people are going, well, what would you do? What do you think is going to happen? I don't know. I think you can draw a line and say, okay, if this happens, then maybe this happens, but we just don't know yet. And this weekend will probably be pretty telling on that front, but this is a team that's going to play in the postseason, so it's got to be a wait and see.
Wes mentioned something a minute ago, and I brought this point up earlier. I think what makes this losses this weekend sting even more is you're looking at a Georgia program that has underachieved themselves for the past 10 years. There's a reason Coach Strickland got fired. He could not get them to a super regional. That was a team that routinely was going to Omaha in the 2000s. So Wes Johnson comes in here as a first-year head coach, first time ever as a head coach, and that program looks a whole lot better than South Carolina's right now. If you told me that Georgia's going to be playing in the College World Series, I'd believe you. So you have this team that you would say South Carolina has fared better than over the course of the recent years that has now seemingly surpassed you with the first-year head coach. That makes this loss look even worse to me and to a lot of people. Yeah, and there was some ugly baseball on both sides this weekend. I don't think Georgia's going to play in Omaha. I think they have an Omaha offense and a Little League defense. That's probably the worst SEC defense I've ever seen from an opponent, and I've been going to Carolina baseball games since I was like 12, so I think that will keep them from Omaha, but that I think made it even more frustrating for South Carolina fans just to watch Georgia give you extra out after extra out this weekend, and still not to be able to completely take advantage. You know, Carolina walked a lot of people, but Georgia was putting people on left and right as well, and just to not be able to take advantage and to let them do that at home, I think was obviously very frustrating. I think there was already some frustration that, those were some good crowds, but those are not the crowds I suspected for a top 25 matchup that's going to determine whether you get to have another set of games at your home park, honestly. So I think it was just a frustrating weekend all the way around. They've got, can they rebound, and would it shock anybody if this team that as up and down as it's been would just went into Tennessee and won 2 out of 3? I don't expect it right now, but would you after the fact be like, oh, that's the most shocking thing I've ever seen? No. Because that there has been some inconsistency. Now some of what we all mistake as inconsistency at times is just matchup based, this week you played a better team than you did last week, and you're going to look worse when you play obviously teams that are better. So I think for South Carolina, they still have a lot of answers that they've got to find. It starts with, again, the starting pitching. They're going to have to change things up. They tried the route of just continuing to go with what they've been going with the first 2 games. I don't think you can do that going into this coming week. Now, Gainey, obviously, his performance gets completely overshadowed by the big picture stuff and by the way the last 2 innings went. But against a Georgia offense that hit pretty much everybody else, he was amazing. But that then eliminates him from being able to go on the back end as well. So that maybe introduces another problem. If I'm South Carolina, now I don't think you can do this week because there's not enough recovery time. I'm maybe piggybacking Gainey and Ty Good on Fridays. But now, you're sort of out of that thought process now because you've got another Thursday, Friday, Saturday next week, and then you're going into the SEC tournament. So you're actually out of your kind of 3-game mindset that you were in. But the best pitcher on this roster, at least right now, is Garrett Gainey.
All right, so Wes, I don't know if you're reacting to me or something you were reading, but when I said this team would play in the postseason, so we got to see how that. Were you like, huh? So what is the worst case scenario? We can say worst case scenario is you go to Tennessee and get swept, and then you're, out immediately in the SEC tournament. Which, by the way, we've seen even the great Gamecock baseball teams.
Hoover's not treated
it's
this
just
team
not
too
a
well.
good spot. So at what point are you like, uh-oh?
Let's save that for the other side. At what point are you panicked? With that coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on your Monday here on the game.
All right, guys. Continue to tell you about our friends at Classic Roofing. Call them today, 803-590-7870, or head on over to classicroofingsc.com. They want to be your trusted partner for all of your roofing needs. Classic Roofing is a culmination of over a decade plus combined of dedicated service to the residential and commercial construction industry. My guys over there, Joe Reeder, Max Sawyer, they're going to take great care of you and all of your roofing needs. Their experience, their team of experts, they're all well-equipped to handle each and every one of your roofing requirements. That could be a residential project, a commercial undertaking, or really anything in between. What you need to do right now, go to classicroofingsc.com, fill out the information on there, let them come out and do a free estimate at your home. They're going to tell you about the life of your roof that you have left. They're going to tell you about any little things that maybe you need to have cleaned up. They're going to make sure you have complete peace of mind about your roof. Call them right now, 803-590-7870, Classic Roofing.
Both, a little bit of both. I talked to him about how this game was not meant to pat you on the back. This is a game built on failure that will beat you up, give you a lot of highs and give you a lot of lows, and you need to handle it properly. And this game will make a man out of you if you play it long enough. And this was one of those weekends that we took a lot of gut punches that we got to make sure we grow from and become tougher from. Again, tip my cap to Georgia. It's amazing what they've done. They've turned that program around in very short order thanks to the transfer portal. It's probably the best offense we saw all year, and we've got to pitch better regardless of who we're playing.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyrod West Mitchell and Chris Clark along with you, reacting to what happened out there at Founders Park this weekend. Georgia comes in sweeping South Carolina. First home sweep of the Gamecocks since Vanderbilt did that back in 2019. That was Coach Kingston with his message to the team coming away from the weekend as they get set to head on the road to take on the #1 team in the country in Tennessee to wrap up the regular season before going to Hoover for the SEC tournament. And Chris, you brought up an interesting point there at the end of that last segment. You know, where is that line of panic? You still have the opportunity to go in Tennessee and win 2 to 3 games if possible, and, you know, feel better about closing out the regular season. At the same time, you also could go in there and get swept to where you're ending the regular season on a 6-game losing streak and kind of limping into Hoover. So where do we set that line of panic at?
Well, I asked Wes the question. But let me go back so the example, and you might say this is the exception, not the rule, and I completely agree. You know, I would say the majority of teams that go on to make a big postseason run and make it to Omaha, you don't look at them and go, I can't believe that happened. You know, like most teams that make it to Omaha are really good throughout the year. And then there are some teams that, you know, at times might look like the best team in college baseball, and they don't make it, you know. But like the Ole Miss team that just 2 years ago, made it to Omaha and won it, they finished the regular season with a losing record. They're 14-16. South Carolina's 13-14 right now.
We bring that team up a lot. However, they won 8 out of their last 11, and 5 of those games were against ranked opponents. So they carried a lot of momentum going into Hoover, where they did get, you know, bounced pretty early there. However, they ended on a strong note.
They swept Missouri. They won a road game against the top 15 out of conference. They swept LSU at LSU. They actually lost the series to A&M, but did capture one. But they went one and done in the SEC tournament.
Yes.
Yeah. So, all right. So the beauty of sports is that, you know, and people I can hear will probably say, well, that's not going to happen with this team. The beauty of sports is that when that was happening with that team, nobody thought that was going to happen then.
Exactly.
Just like, you know, close to home here, after South Carolina, different sport, but South Carolina gets smashed by Florida in Gainesville. Nobody thought they even had a chance to be on the same field as Tennessee. And they go out there and have one of the most memorable wins in school history and then go beat Clemson the next week. So the beauty of sports is the second you think you have it figured out, teams surprise you. And so, again, you do have to let it play out. Like, now, is there a doomsday scenario? Like, I think South Carolina is in the tournament regardless, but is there a doomsday scenario where, you know, that starts to become in question? The RPI is probably high enough that, and they've played such a tough schedule.
Yeah, they're 19 in the RPI coming away from the weekend, so still sitting at a place, but you get swept by Tennessee and you go one and done at Hoover, there'd be reason to be worried.
Yeah, and so I think you need to have some, and that's to me why yesterday or Saturday was so important, even though you'd already lost the series. Just winning one for the metrics and to keep you at 14-13 in SEC play, I think that pretty much would have guaranteed, regardless of what would happen next, that you're going to be in the big tournament. Now, to me, this was a team. If you had told me that South Carolina, you know how the fan base has been kind of lukewarm to this team for much of the year. If you'd have told me that South Carolina, you know, finished 15-15, but still hosted and then just rolled through a regional once they're playing non-SEC competition, to me, that tracks. Like this, and I think the people comparing South Carolina and the current program to South Carolina 10 years ago, the difference is the SEC has caught up.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is you got every single team in this league, except for Missouri, I think, who actually cares about baseball and is putting support behind baseball. That has not always been the case. So I'm not saying people's opinions about, the state of the program and all that stuff are wrong. I'm really not. I do think it is a little bit more nuanced when you have to look at the overall state of the SEC now compared to then and the number of resources that are put into winning in this conference. South Carolina was actually very much ahead of the curve in supporting baseball at a quote-unquote SEC, like it just means more level, and that gave them a big advantage, I think, early on. That advantage is a little bit gone when you look around this conference and who you play week in, week out.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Not all programs, even some that were really good, supported baseball. Heck, we were talking off air about Florida. As good as they've been under Kevin O'Sullivan, there were times where Kevin O'Sullivan was pounding the table, for more facilities upgrades, more support at Florida. And I guess he ended up getting some of those things.
Winning a national championship helps.
Those always help. You can tend to say, hey, we just won a title. Can we please have these things? Remember the run that Dan McDonnell had at Louisville? They've slipped, but the run that he had there for, 4 or 5 seasons, they didn't have much in the way at that time.
Right.
And now you're seeing whether it's, because now NIL comes into the equation. Mark Kingston referenced that with Georgia. That comes into the equation, facilities, the amount of support that people are putting in. Like you said, Wes, Missouri's got people, sitting in the stands to do the broadcast. But other than that, everybody else is really caught up and really putting it in. Now, that's not South Carolina's historically been good at baseball or great at baseball, and people are itching to get back there, which is why there's so much conversation about all this.
Yeah, and I'm just pointing that out as a factor in all this. I'm not in any way saying if you're South Carolina, you shouldn't expect to compete every year and to put a team out there that can maybe go to Omaha. I think this it is still one series. The thing about baseball, and I watch a lot of baseball. I watch baseball almost every night. You can look awful one weekend. You can look awful for a cluster of games, and then you can turn it around and look fantastic. You can look unbeatable the next week, and then you can go back to looking awful when you're playing against good teams. But this weekend just felt a little bit different because it just felt like Georgia came into your house and was pretty dominant. And that's something that is a tough pill to swallow, especially for a Georgia team that we didn't circle them all year long as being like some top 5 elite team. South Carolina's played elite teams all year long. Georgia was not supposed to be one of them, and then they came in and did what they did. That vision of, and like you said, Tyler, if you're down 3 or 4 runs, I thought South Carolina was going to be down 2 runs because I thought Casas had hit a bomb in the bottom of the previous inning. Georgia finally decides to play some defense and makes that play, and then so it's still 4, and then Georgia puts the game away. If you go in down 3 or 4, anything could happen with these two teams, I think. But that realization from the fan base of this might be the last game we're playing here at Founders, and just walking out, like just watching the fans walk out, and that's not you don't have any faith. When you walk out down by that much, that's I'm just defeated for this day.
Yeah. No, I don't think anybody's questioning the fan base wanting to buy in because, again, this is a passionate fan base about baseball, but it's just there have been so many points this season where it's been hard for them to buy in because it's been so up and down. And, again, baseball's such a what have you done for me lately type of sport, and what you did for them lately this past weekend obviously wasn't great. So not a lot of confidence.
Gut punch, as Kingston said.
Yeah, for sure, and not a ton of confidence going in this weekend against Tennessee. Could they go in there and sweep or take 2 out of 3? Sure, anything's possible. But if you ask the general consensus fans right now, I don't think a lot of people are holding out hope on that.
No, and by the way, related but not the same, I am curious. We got a little bit of time. Hit us on our text line. It is the Firehouse Subs line.
That is the Firehouse Subs text line.
I got to thinking this weekend. Who's the best player you've ever seen play in person for an opponent? Like you just want to give like.
Is Charlie Kahn in that for you now?
Well, I was gonna say like you just have like basically they're so good that you just have to shake your head and give them their due.
Yeah.
I was texting a couple of my buddies. I was like, man, Condon might be top 5 for South Carolina opponents that
In
I've
baseball
seen,
or any sport?
regardless
Any
of sport.
That's
that guy. I was trying to figure out how the Braves could get to a point where they could draft him.
That's a good question. Firehouse Subs text on 803-404-6100. Who's the best opponent you've seen in person go against the Gamecocks? We'll hit that coming up. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Monday here on the Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark with you wrapping up today's edition of the show. Wes posed a very interesting question there at the end of that last segment. Who is the best opponent you've ever watched take on South Carolina? Got some good responses coming in. Got nameless texter that agrees with what we were saying a moment ago. Charlie Condon felt like, let's say 2 days in a row, felt like half the stadium wanted to put him on first base. Joey weighs in with Peyton Manning. That's a good one. JB with Tebow. Charlie weighs in with Khalil Green. It's a lot of good names there. A lot of good options.
I have mine. And Wes, I did not at the time want to shake his hand by any means, but mine's Cam Newton.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say Cam or Tebow.
So Tebow was incredible. Like, I'm in saying this, I am not detracting from his skills at all. He was incredible. But when I looked on the field, like Urban Meyer's offense at that time had a little bit more novelty to it, coming into the SEC. And then you just looked up and down the field, and the amount of talent, it was like, just give the ball to Percy Harvin, right? Cam Newton, on the other hand, and I'll botch this stat, I'm sure. I think their entire offense, he was the only guy that even played in the NFL.
They had a right guard that got one start in the NFL, but that was
Tyler.
it.
There you go.
Tyler knew.
So he was, I don't want to say, now again, Gus Malzahn's offense, right? I mean, that he was running as the OC with Cam Newton. It was also, a very difficult, the tempo, the run, the play action. But Cam Newton was the perfect guy for it. And, you could have put Cam Newton in any offense in the country. To me, just individually, he was the best player I've seen play against South Carolina because you could have everything dialed up perfectly. We saw it he beat South Carolina twice that year. SEC title game. You've got a great play on here defensively. Nope, doesn't matter. He'll just wiggle out of it, make something happen.
When he made that dive from, like, the 10-yard line, and just flew into the end zone. Cam did. Man, Tebow scoring, what was it, 7 touchdowns at Williams-Brice? That was an experience. Let me tell you. I wasn't at the game. It was on the road, obviously. I wasn't at the game when McFadden rushed for 300-something yards. But for a lot of people, he'd have to be up there, I think. Trying to think. There have definitely been some others, but recency bias aside, Charlie Condon, I was like, I get that. The thing is, he's tall, but he's not a big dude.
Yeah, he doesn't look threatening for what you think.
See him swing a bat.
For what you think a power hitter should be, he doesn't look the part, but he certainly plays the part.
Yeah, but that's a good thing, man, for longevity. The fact that he gets his power honest. Like, this is not a guy who's just been in the weight room and has had to go Barry Bonds to hit the long ball. Like, he just naturally, he's a late bloomer, I guess. It's a weird story. I'm amazed he even made it to, he didn't sign early, but was not super highly recruited.
Nope, had to come in as a walk-on.
Insane story to me, but that guy is incredible. Now, is he draft eligible this year? Is that right?
He's going to be like the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. You won't have to deal with him next year.
What about hoops? I've been trying to think of who's the best opposing basketball player that we've seen at South Carolina.
A lot of good options.
Carolina did play Steph Curry in the NIT 1 year, so that's got to be up there.
I think, this is a recency bias too. Brandon Miller from Alabama.
Did he score 40-something?
I think it was when he dropped 41, I think, in that game.
Was that,
2 seasons
ago. That was career high. If not, it was close to it.
I don't remember what he did, but, Anthony Edwards would have rolled through here, right?
Yeah, but God, it's just hard to remember. That
was a bad Georgia team.
So bad.
But look how good Anthony Edwards is now. Like, if you're gonna say it like in terms of that particular game versus okay, seeing someone who's become a superstar
right
on your court, you know?
Yeah, I know. It still blows my mind that team was that bad. Let's see, someone weighs in, Shaq. So have to go back in time a little bit on that one, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would say
pretty good pick. That's the cool thing though about covering South Carolina program. You know, you're playing SEC baseball, football, basketball has gotten way better than it was. You know, I'm sure some people can dip back into the old days of the ACC and name a whole bunch of players, you know, that South Carolina played against as well on the hardwood. But we've just seen so many incredible players. You know, Todd Gurley. Like, you know, like, I mean, there's just so many that when I would ask Gamecock football players, who's the best player you played against when you were here, about 75% of them said Todd Gurley. Because I asked like all of them.
Dude was a freak.
Gamecock Tuck on Gamecock Central says Deion Sanders for football.
Ooh.
And Herschel Walker for football.
It's hard to argue with. Appreciate everybody weighing in. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show with myself and Terry Ford. Come up next on your Monday here on The Game.
Our friends over at Integrated Media can do so much to take your home to the next level so that you can enjoy your home more. They can do home theater so you can binge your favorite shows like never before. A complete smart home system that makes adjusting the thermostat easy, whether you're at home, whether you're on vacation, whether you're at work. They can install a smart home system for you where you can control your lights, your thermostat, your devices, everything from the touch of a button. Jam out to your favorite band while you're doing something like the dishes with a whole home audio system, or you can monitor your home from your smartphone while you're on vacation or away from your home with their security and camera services. Go to integratedmediainc.com to learn more, or give our friends Michael and Nathan a call, 803-948-8327. Again, go to integratedmediainc.com to get more information on their services. Integrated Media, 803-948-8327.